Good morning. I'm Dr. Gail Patton, the CEO of Hubbard House, the Certified Domestic Violence Center serving Duval and Baker counties. I want to start this morning by thanking the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and Director Ed Cayenne for hosting us here today. There are so many others to thank for their support, including our partners in the court systems like Duval County Clerk of the Courts, Jody Phillips, our regional law enforcement, so we have including St. John County Sheriff's Office Director Jason Caban, Commander Bill Worley, Corporate Skip Cole, Clay County Sheriff's Office Chiefs Baylor Alexander and Thomas Kachavalich, Nassau County Sheriff's Office Captain Charles Lucas, Neptune Beach Police Chief Michael Key, Atlantic Beach Police Commander David Cameron, Orange Park Police Assistant Chief Cody Monroe, Duval County School Assistant Chief J.D. Harness, that's Police Assistant, Jody Altman with the Baker County Sheriff's Office, and everyone else standing here behind us. Also, our community advocates, including Carrie Gaynor with the State Attorney's Office, Lynn Sherman with the City of Jacksonville, and victim advocates from across the city are here as well. We also have our passionate leaders in this movement standing right here with me. Kelly Franklin with Betty Griffin Center serving St. Johns County, and we have Julia Edwards with Quigley House in Clay County, and Tracy Fosso with Micah's Place in Nassau County. I take this time to introduce everyone, not only to recognize their support, and I am very thankful for everybody coming out, particularly with the last minute change, but also to show that domestic violence, it is not an isolated issue. It's not a private matter. Domestic violence affects our entire community, all of Northeast Florida. But our community is also you. And you are also the solution, because you are the person who will see the signs that a neighbor is experiencing abuse. You are the person who asks the survivor if they need help. You can be the bridge that connects survivor to life-saving, life-changing support. You can be that very bridge of safety. And our social media campaign this Domestic Violence Awareness Month is #BridgeToSafety. Isn't just in uplifting the role you play in helping a survivor find safety, so it's just not a fun thing to say. It really is a call to action, because you are the bridge to safety. We need you to let survivors know about the resources available through all of our agencies. Sharing our social media messages through this month to help raise awareness of our 24-hour hotline, that is being a bridge to safety. Finding that quiet moment alone with someone you suspect might be experiencing abuse, and letting that person know that help is available. That is being a bridge to safety. And for the survivor who feels they are alone, telling them that you believe them and support them, that also is being a bridge to safety. Survivors need these bridges. With the domestic violence homicides in our community last year, too many times we heard friends, families, and neighbors say they knew of the violence, but didn't offer help. A 32-year-old woman fatally shot by her boyfriend would regularly tell family things were bad in the relationship. A 61-year-old woman brutally beaten to death by her boyfriend had a neighbor who admitted to hearing violence time and time again. Now let me be clear. The responsibility for these deaths is solely on the abusers who took the lives. But if survivors have someone, anyone they know will help them leave, someone who tells them they deserve better, or someone to share information about domestic violence resources they didn't realize were available, then maybe, just maybe, that survivor escapes before the violence escalates. Maybe you have built a bridge where no one ever existed before. And to survivors, that's why we're all here. To survivors, we know that the bridge to safety can be dangerous. We know it can seem steep and long, but you don't need to walk that bridge alone. Hubbard House is here for you. Betty Griffin Center, Micah's Place, and Quigley House, we are all here for you and your family. You deserve to be safe. And law enforcement, they are another life-bridging way to safety. So now, I would like to introduce JSO's Director of Investigations and Homeland Security, Ed Cayenne.
Thank you. So good morning. On behalf of Sheriff Waters, I am Ed Cayenne. And each October, we gather to acknowledge Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This year, we campaigned together under the hashtag Bridge to Safety. This theme is a charge to our community to bridge a survivor's passage to safety. This call acknowledges that a survivor's journey is a shared one in which community members partner. Each and every one of us can play a vital role in a survivor's story. During 2025, there have been 5,442 reported domestic violence cases. At this time last year, there were 5,334 reported domestic violence cases. And at the same time in 2023, there were over 6,000 reported cases. These numbers are promising and inspire hope. And yet, despite encouraging decline, there are still survivors living in danger. This year, I am heartened to see diversity of stakeholders here, unified by the common mission of ending domestic violence and advocating for survivors. I want to acknowledge many of the elected officials, law enforcement partners, and community leaders who are in attendance today. Look around within yourselves. The bridge to safety stands beside you and within you. Law enforcement plays a vital role in advocating for crime survivors and providing a bridge to safety. Perhaps no field of law enforcement is that truer than in law enforcement prevention of domestic violence. For so long, domestic abuse was considered a familiar issue. Today, we recognize it for what it is, an inexcusable violence for which there must be accountability. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office commits to serve survivors of domestic violence first and foremost in a way that is victim-centered and trauma-informed. Our agency fundamentally believes that empowering survivors is as critical as bringing offenders to justice. In this spirit, JSO has created the Intimate Violence Enhanced Services Team, better known as INVEST. INVEST was created as a multidisciplinary team to work intensively with families who are identified to be at the greatest risk of severe injury or death due to domestic violence. INVEST team members receive police reports and acts of domestic violence that occur in Jacksonville. Likewise, INVEST members also receive referrals from the Domestic Violence Collaborative Service agencies. INVEST team members consist of personnel from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, Hubbard House, and the City of Jacksonville. They provide an enhanced response, intensive support, and wraparound services which strengthen the follow-up investigations of high risk for fatality domestic violence incidents. Additionally, to ensure that our response to survivors is consistent with best practices, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office has expanded our survivor-centered education to all of our officers. Today, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office trains patrol officers, not just investigators, who specialize in domestic violence on trauma-informed victim interviewing. Patrol officers responding to these calls are service typically are the first contact with law enforcement survivors. Officers who are educated in survivor trauma and domestic violence cycle not only put together better investigations, they provide stronger foundations for survivors-centered journey through the criminal justice system. By holding domestic abusers accountable and linking these survivors to services, we can reduce the threat of lethality. Holding abusers accountable is critically important to ending domestic violence. But our advocates, our officers, will always prioritize the physical and emotional needs of the survivors that we serve above all else. I am proud that the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office partners with organizations and agencies to work collaboratively to empower survivors for offenders accountable. Jacksonville is blessed to have resources such as the Hubbard House, because without their committed advocates and service providers at the Hubbard House, the agencies simply could not support our survivors of domestic violence in the holistic way necessary to end the cycle of violence. Likewise, without our valued partners at the State Attorney's Office, who understand the potential of lethality of domestic violence, we could not hold abusers accountable for their actions. I want all domestic survivors to know that our local law enforcement community recognizes your dignity and commits to stand with you throughout the criminal justice process. We strive to play an important role in your healing. Partnered together, survivors and law enforcement advocates will promote a culture of accountability that champions our survivors. The men and women of JSO will always be your bridge to safety. Now I'd like to introduce the clerk of our Duval County Clerk of Court, Mr. Jody Phillips.
Thank you, Director. It's an honor for us to be here today and representing our office. Domestic violence is a real issue in our community, and as you heard last year, we had nearly 6,000 cases of domestic violence that were reported here in Duval County. And unfortunately, many of these cases go unreported. So those are the ones that we know of. And it's only by working together as a community that we can address this issue head on. This is why I'm so pleased to stand before you this morning alongside our partner agencies, showing the commitment of the Clerk's Office to work hand in hand with the Sheriff's Office, the State Attorney's Office, and of course, Hubbard House. We enjoy a fantastic partnership with each of these agencies and will continue to work with them every day to fill the critical need here in Jacksonville. I'm proud to support Hubbard House. Throughout the year, the Clerk's Office participates in awareness campaigns. In fact, tomorrow afternoon, what has become an annual tradition, we will place purple flags on the front lawn of the courthouse that will represent every case that was filed here in Duval County this past year, and I believe this year we have over 6,000 flags. And our goal every year is obviously to place less and less flags, and we've discussed before it would be nice to not place any flags in the front lawn of the courthouse, but we'll continue to do that to bring awareness to domestic violence. We also hold donation drives at the Clerk's Office to support Hubbard House's vital mission in our community. And I truly believe that over the 1,000 statutory duties of the Clerk's Office, one of the most critical services we offer is support for survivors of domestic violence. We have an amazing, compassionate team in our domestic violence department, many of whom are here today. They do a fantastic job. And they work with survivors daily to help them complete their injunction petitions, as well as put them in touch with resources in our community like Hubbard House. No one should have to walk alone in this journey, and we are proud to stand with our community today to support victims and to put an end to domestic violence. It's now my honors to introduce Lynn Sherman, who is the Executive Director of Health Programs with the City of Jacksonville.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm honored and privileged to stand before you this morning to present this proclamation on behalf of Mayor Donna Deegan. This proclamation is a testament of her steadfast commitment to our community, her passion, and her tireless effort to make Jacksonville a better place for all its residents. Mayor Deegan has always been steadfast in her commitment to stand with the most vulnerable among us, those whose voices have too often been silenced by fear and pain. We're reminded that Jacksonville must be a place where every person is valued, respected, and safe in their own home. Today, we affirm our collective responsibility to break cycles of abuse, to extend compassion, and to build pathways to healing and hope. It is with that spirit that I present this proclamation recognizing October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the city of Jacksonville. Proclamation, A New Day. Whereas domestic violence is a serious crime that affects individuals of all races, genders, ages, and socioeconomic levels, leaving deep and lasting impacts on survivors, families, and communities. And whereas 1 in 3 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime, and in Duval County alone, approximately 6,000 incidents are reported each year, underscoring the urgent need for prevention, awareness, and intervention. And whereas the consequences of domestic violence extend far beyond the immediate harm, creating physical, emotional, and financial challenges for survivors, while also placing burdens on schools, workplaces, healthcare systems, and justice system. And whereas it is imperative to support survivors of domestic violence as they heal, regain autonomy, and restore their sense of safety, while also holding predators accountable and working to break the cycles of abuse. Whereas Hubbard House Incorporated provides life-saving resources to more than 4,500 survivors of domestic violence each year through a variety of free services to adults and children, all aimed at supporting the safety, empowerment, and healing of survivors. And whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an opportunity to honor survivors, remember victims, and call upon our community to stand united against abuse while encouraging education, prevention, accountability, and support for survivors. Now, therefore, I, the Mayor, Donna Deegan, by the virtue of the authority vested in her as the mayor of the city of Jacksonville, do hereby proclaim October 2025 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Jacksonville, and encourage all residents to join me in recognizing the devastating impact of domestic violence, supporting survivors, promoting prevention, and standing with organizations such as Hubbard House, working every day to create a community free from violence and filled with respect, safety, and hope. Witnessed and signed by Mayor Donna Deegan. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce Carrie Gaynor, 4th Judicial Circuit State Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Ms. Sherman. Good morning. Again, my name is Carrie Gaynor. I am the Director of the Special Victims Unit at the State Attorney's Office, and I am honored to be here again for this annual event that highlights our collective efforts at combating domestic violence and highlighting the good work that is done by the Domestic Violence Review Team. When you look around this room, you see the commitment by all of our excellent partners. And at the State Attorney's Office, we are fortunate to be a part of this teamwork. Our partners include Hubbard House, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, the Duval County Clerk's Office, the Office of the Attorney General, the United States Navy, the Battered Women's Justice Project, the Equality Foundation, LLC, and the University of North Florida, that are all part of the annual Domestic Fatality Review. For those who are not familiar with the team's work, we meet during the first half of the year and analyze adult domestic violence homicides within Duval County from the prior year, and the entire team provides findings and recommendations. I again have the honor to serve as the co-chair and meeting coordinator. In those roles, I also assist with the editing and the individual reports. Today, I would like to share some of those findings with you. This year, our team reviewed 14 cases of domestic violence-related homicide that involved 19 deaths. Of the 19 deaths, 3 were perpetrators who died by suicide. 4 cases involving 4 homicide victims were deemed to be justifiable homicides. Of the 14 domestic homicide cases, 11 involved intimate partner violence, while 3 involved non-intimate partners, such as roommates or family members. With that said, what does this mean? In 2023, our team reviewed 10 cases. In 2022, we reviewed 14 domestic homicide cases, and in 2021, we reviewed 17 cases. The data from last year, although not outside of the norm, was not encouraging given 2023's numbers. And while we know the goal of reaching 0 domestic homicides may not seem plausible, it is a meaningful effort and one that we should try to save lives. Your members of law enforcement, the state attorney's office, and our community partners make that effort each and every day. Some of the patterns that we saw in this year's review. Annual data since 1997 shows that perpetrators are typically male in domestic violence homicide cases. In 2024, that was no different, with 55% of intimate partner domestic violence homicides being committed by men against women. That is 6 out of 11 of the cases, of the 11 intimate partner violence cases. One additional case involved a male perpetrator on a male victim. Of the remaining 4 cases of women against male victims, 3 were deemed justifiable homicides. The primary area of concern from the 2024 data involves prior domestic violence history. Of the 11 intimate partner homicides, 9 of those cases, 82%, involved a history of domestic violence between the perpetrator and the victim, where the perpetrator had a history of violence either against their partner or a prior partner. In the 3 intimate partner cases that were deemed justifiable, there was also a history of domestic violence by the victim on the perpetrator. One recommendation we have is to encourage the consideration of prior incidents of domestic violence by a suspect in proceedings dealing with injunctions for protection, child custody, and similar matters in the court system. When called out to domestic violence calls, law enforcement should highlight the risks of prior domestic violence with the victims while conducting lethality assessments and clearly communicating any lethality risks to those victims. While our community domestic violence organizations and the Sheriff's Office have successfully partnered to reduce lethal violence in high-risk cases of domestic violence, our team further encourages and recommends enhanced outreach to victims of domestic violence in situations that aren't necessarily high risk. The data from 2024 also shows a need for systemic intervention and support, as only 2 cases indicated that a batterer's intervention program was ever ordered. And there were no records in either of those cases to show whether or not those batterer's intervention programs were actually completed. As well as 3 cases that involved mental health issues and 8 cases that showed patterns of substance abuse. Our team's review of records showed that systemic support for substance abuse, mental health, or domestic violence intervention were either not offered or were underutilized in those cases. As a result, another recommendation is that the criminal justice system and social support systems examine the referral processes to help expedite these processes and create opportunities for parties to receive the needed support. As with previous years, firearms remain the primary weapon in domestic violence homicides. This year, firearms were used in 79% of domestic homicide cases. That is, and in 8 of the 11 intimate partner homicide cases, that would be 73%. For the data since 1997, firearms have accounted for 60% of domestic homicide cases during this period. Thus, abusers who have access to firearms remain a significant threat to their potential victims, and consequently, when domestic violence victims come forward, it is extremely important that lethality assessments and safety planning be thoroughly discussed with these victims. Our team further encourages the use of risk protection orders in such cases. In 82% of the intimate partner homicides, the perpetrator and the victim resided together. 3 of the cases involved married couples and 6 involved dating couples. Although this may seem obvious, it is important to highlight that cohabitation provides perpetrators with access to their victims and the ability to isolate their victims. This is where friends, family, and neighbors can all assist in reporting incidents that they see and hear. Even after law enforcement contacts victims, social service providers should advise victims of alternative housing solutions such as Hubbard House, Quigley House, the Betty Griffin Center, or Micah's Place. Now on to our final finding. This is new to this report, but is certainly not a new issue and has been highlighted by several speakers here today. But we highlight it here because of its statistical significance in 2024. Specifically, in 5 out of the 11 intimate partner cases, domestic violence was known to friends, family, and neighbors, and no one reported it. I, along with past chairs, have often closed our remarks with, if you see something, say something, or help us prevent someone from becoming a statistic. These words have never been truer than today. The front line of this conflict begins with everyday citizens, friends, relatives, neighbors, even complete strangers. We must take our responsibility to our society seriously. We must take our responsibility to this community seriously. Law enforcement and our community partners become involved after domestic violence occurs. But the people of the city of Jacksonville can help to prevent violence and provide victims with the support to stand up against their abusers. As a consequence, our team recommends additional community outreach to educate the public on the dangers of domestic violence, how to offer support to victims, and how to safely help. We cannot do this alone. Family, friends, neighbors, strangers, every citizen. We need your eyes, we need your ears, and your will to do the right thing. No one deserves to be abused. The shove, the slap, the harsh verbal words in public, these are displays that could ultimately explode behind closed doors. But also the screaming and shouting in the middle of the night that you hear from your neighbor's apartment can intensify into something much worse. Our motto at the State Attorney's Office is to pursue justice always. Domestic violence remains a scourge on the households and families in every corner of Jacksonville. This office, along with our greater community, remain committed to the pursuit of justice for victims and to do our part to help victims and their loved ones build a bridge between the tragedies and closure. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. What you've heard here today is the unfortunate reality of the danger that so many in our community face each and every day. But to someone living in domestic violence, you can survive, you can be safe. Tanya is an amazing example of the resilience and strength of survivors, and I would like to invite her up to share her story.
The majority of my childhood, I felt unloved, unwanted, abandoned, and rejected. I am the child of divorced parents, and at a young age, my mom sent me to live with my dad in North Carolina. I endured many beatings at his hands. Dad told me I wouldn't beat you if I didn't love you. It was the first time, but not the last time, I would hear that. When I was 15 years old, I met the man who became my abuser. He was so handsome and a football player at that. He said he loved me and wanted to be with me. He said that a lot, even as he started hitting me. At 16, I became pregnant with his child. By that time, I had nowhere to live because I couldn't stay with my dad anymore. So I endured my abuser's beatings in return for the nights I could stay with him at his mom or dad's place. But there weren't many of those nights. I would sleep outside in the snow with only a few blankets. I was on the corner begging for food because I was pregnant and hungry. All through this time, he would tell me about how my mom and dad didn't want me, and he was all I had. In those moments, it felt real. As long as I had him, I thought I would be okay, but he was heavily involved in drugs, dealing and using. When I was 8 months pregnant, he stole drugs, and a dealer held a gun to my head to punish him. Once I caught him cheating, and he beat me for catching him. He would always tell me how ugly I was, and no one wanted me except him. I stayed because I believed him. It didn't matter how many times he hit me. He convinced me he was all I had. And if I lost him, I would lose everything. But I lost so much anyway. I had to beg social services for help because I was trying to feed 2 kids, but he kept on stealing the aid and the money I would get. To keep getting support, social services said I need to leave him, but I couldn't. He instilled so much fear in me and played with my mind for so long that I felt like I would die if I lost him. Instead, I lost my 2 children. They were taken from me and adopted out because our home was too high of a risk. Still, the abuse got worse. He picked me up by my neck until my feet were dangling off the floor. He sold me more times than I can count to get drugs. If I said no to him or did something he didn't like, more beatings. I would walk on eggshells every day, wondering if the day I was going to die. I knew I needed to get out, and it became crystal clear one night. He ran a butcher knife down my back, and he said, "My brother killed his wife, and I'm going to kill you. If I can't have you, no one else will." When he fell asleep, I left, but I never looked back. I couldn't look in the mirror for a long time because he had convinced me I was ugly, and I still believed it. I was so ashamed of what I had been through, what I had lost, and the things that he had made me do. I came to Jacksonville to stay with a friend, to be with people who cared about me. I still felt broken, even all those years after leaving the relationship. Jacksonville is where I started healing. I went back to church, finding a new home at Abundant Life, World Harvest Ministries. I picked up my Bible and learned who God says I am, and that changed my life. I am wonderfully and fearfully made and highly blessed and favored by God. I became a medical assistant, and I have found my calling, helping people each and every day. I started telling myself how beautiful I am, and I am not my past. I know how to truly love. I know self-worth. I know courage. I know resilience. I know strength. The abuse doesn't define me. I define myself. I stand before you, a survivor. I know there are many women going through this right now. And to those women, safety is possible. Organizations like the Hubbard House is here for you. You can stand on your own. You are worth it. Your lives and your children's lives are worth saving. You can be free. You are beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, for your strength, your energy, and your passion for helping survivors of domestic violence. You are an inspiration. You're awesome. And thank you to everyone here for joining us here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for changing up your schedule. And thank you for giving your time to creating a future where one day we won't gather for this because there will be no domestic homicides. Thank you.